Hello, everyone, and welcome to the future of space. I'm your host, Daniel Fox. Our guest today is Chris Sembroski. Chris was a crew member on Inspiration 4, the world's first all civilian mission to orbit. He served in the US Air Force and was involved with Pro Space, a grassroots organization lobbying effort that promoted legislation in Washington, D.C. to help open up space travel and allow companies like SpaceX to exist. Chris, it is a pleasure to have you on the future of space.
I'm glad to be here, Daniel. Thanks for having me on.
Chris, before we talk about your journey to space and everything that you've experienced in the last year and what you're working on right now, can you share with us three words that for you capture the essence of space?
Oh, for me, there are so many to choose from. For me, it's infinite, it's limitless, and it's inspiring.
And what would you? There's obviously there are stories about space being a benefit for science and technology, but if you were to think of space as a human story, what would it mean for you? What is the human story of going to space?
Oh, well, the human story of going to space is that I know for our flight, we had this incredible mission of taking four civilians to space, but it wasn't just those four humans. It was trying to do something great for all of humanity back on Earth. And the story of humanity going to space is a story of humanity thriving here on Earth and anywhere else that we want to set our feet. Uh, Being able to go out into space and understand what our place is in the universe, to see those finite amount of resources that we have available from an unbelievable perspective that really demonstrates what kind of a fragile and precious place we have here on Earth, and seeing all those things from space that indicate that we really are having an incredible impact on our planet. The story of humans going to space is being able to understand how we can better take care of our home planet and how we can better take care of each other.
I think that's the power of all of travel, right? To go outside of where you were born and to see it in context with its surrounding and seeing it from where you came from and appreciating also what you have back home because we take these things for granted until we travel and we realize, these I don't have these things and I realize now how I appreciate those things, but it's only by going to other places. In the same way that when we went to the moon, often we say we went to the moon to learn about the moon, when in reality, we learned more about ourselves. We discovered ourselves in the process, right?
Right. I think, it's been said many times that travel is the best. Well, so what is it? The travel is the best education. I'm probably butchering that phrase, but it's something that I now have a renewed sense and urgency to do, especially for my two children, that they need to experience something outside their little bubble of our family and their school. And I think that's something that we all need to keep in mind, is that we are constantly within our own familiar surroundings unless you take that opportunity to experience what's outside your bubble, to travel, to see what else is out there. And I think going to space also just really encouraged me to want to look back and see those next places that I need to go. There was this unique calling I felt, being drawn to all those beautiful locations that we were seeing from high on orbit, that said, I need to travel. I need to experience these things firsthand and not just see them from a high vantage point. I need to be amongst those mountains. I need to see that delta. I need to go see the coast of Australia, be in those Andes Mountains, and really just kind of see some of these things first. Excuse me, see these things firsthand and in person. Uh, the Earth is such an amazing and beautiful place, and it's an opportunity to open up a whole new chapter of your whole life, of being able to understand what you can do and can see. I felt like the best way to introduce someone to how you should spend your time on Earth is by getting an overview effect of going to space, and treat that as the introduction to your uh, life's work, into your life's novel, and then start filling in the chapters with individual places you visit.
Now, I had the pleasure of talking to your wife last week when you and I we met, and she was telling me indeed that the family is looking forward now, planning on traveling and visiting those places that you just enumerated. I assume that the kids are going to come along, right?
Well, absolutely. There are great times where she and I can go off and uh, just be the two of us. Uh, but as parents, we find those to be rare and far between. And so it's more important for me to be able to instill in my children and my two daughters that there is so much to see, so much to experience outside of just going to school and coming home every day or doing extracurricular activities in our neighborhood. They need to see more than just vacation destinations. They need to see other cultures. They need to experience other foods and get a little bit outside their comfort zone, because that's where we all grow, right? That's where we get the opportunity to really connect with each other.
Yeah, we forget the dynamic reality of learning, of growing. It's a dynamic and almost uncomfortable process. I mean, we often talk about the becoming our own
Yeah.
butterfly, but we forget to talk about how the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Like it has to isolate itself, it has to grow a cocoon, and it has to really become goo, and then it has to force its way out. And then I was reading there were even these that study where scientists actually tried to help the butterflies come out of that cocoon by cutting it open, and they realized that when they did that, the butterflies actually were
Right.
much weaker. So it was just really to illustrate how this
Yeah.
the challenge of coming out actually builds resilience so that you can face the reality. So getting outside of that comfort zone through that travel obviously kind of brings like makes you more resilient, opens you up to new experiences, and makes you appreciate what you have back home. Would you agree?
Right. And I think what we learn from those things, and it's backed by research as well, is that when it comes to anxieties and fears of going outside what you're used to, you actually do better when you don't have those false senses of security, that you don't put in those artificial um, the comforts that will soften the blow of something that might be a little bit more fear inducing. You come out stronger and better, and you're able to handle the next challenge great more in a more better more better way is totally bad grammar. My wife's gonna definitely mark me down for that. But you're going to definitely uh, do better when you experience something else that's a little scary, because you get the sense and you build that self confidence to uh, try on something new and try the next hard thing and take on new challenges. You build that resiliency, you build that growth mindset that says, I'm going to stick with whatever this task is until I see it all the way through. Um, my wife's a sixth grade teacher, and so she talks a lot about a growth mindset and elevating the level of rigor in students so that they are willing to be okay and sit with the struggle while they are doing the work. It's really the best way to grow and to learn and to understand uh, the material or the subject that you're finding yourself surrounded in.
Now, the you and I think we grew up in a different generation. I think our parents were present but less involved into our day to day. They would kind of open the door and kick us out, and have us come back until dinner time or lunchtime,
Yeah, when the streetlights turn on, right? Yeah.
through which through which we would roam the neighborhood and try to climb up trees, figure out how to come down from the trees. Going up the trees were often the most easiest thing, but coming down was the scariest one. But I think that the parents today, because they are more involved, really more present, they have difficulties letting go of the risk and that risky zone that is necessary for these children to explore on their own. You have two children, two daughters. One is 4. I can't remember what's the age of the other, but
Oh, 4 and 10. Yes.
you just For intent, you just mentioned how it is important to let them explore, but also can you share also the the challenge to let go of the control and to learn also for you to just let them explore the world on their own?
Yeah, it is a bit of a balancing act, and especially between uh, myself and my wife. As a dad, the tendency is to let them be more physically risky and try things that that may result in bumps and scrapes, and nothing that's going to be life threatening. But and that's okay, and you do work with those things, but I think a lot of that comes from like that tendency to be kind of very involved and very protective in a way comes from having this access to knowledge, access to news and data, where we all are very much more aware of what is around us. We see the news, and typically to get views, they report just the scariest parts and the more fear-inducing parts that will drive viewership. And so there's little incentive on a lot of news agencies or reporting outlets to talk about what the good and the positive impacts are out there and what the good stories are. You're bombarded by scary stories and stories of child abductions or rape or you name it, and it's fear inducing. And just like we talked about before, but that's the number one instinct in moms and dads is to protect their children. And so I get that you have to play that balancing game of understanding what is an acceptable risk, um, knowing that there are all these different types of hazards out there. Are they real? Are they imagined? And that's kind of a struggle each parent has to go through. Is it something that's actually in your neighborhood, or is it something perceived that's not real? And you really just got to build up your community around you to understand. Okay, is it my neighborhood? Is it just me? What's going on? Are there other people in my community that are helping to watch out for each other? And that I think that's going to be an ongoing struggle.
It is. I mean, no one said that being a parent was easy. And being a parent, I think, in today's
Right.
world, having to deal with social media and a load, saturated in a world of information and disinformation, it's surely not an easy job. Hence, the necessity to have a community and the strong support around you to help you in those decisions. And, having
Hmm.
a sense of also um, the responsibility that you have as a parent. You're there to help them build the skills so to face life and pushing the boundaries and exploring that uncomfortable zone for themselves. I think is a necessary part for that growth on their end.
Oh, absolutely, it is. Yeah, absolutely. And we work, and that had the added benefit of having my wife being a teacher, like I mentioned before, and having seen early on in our children's education that intentional relationship building with their teachers and adults around them that they interact with every day, for various reasons, because we want to make sure that they are learning, that they're growing. But in the early education, when it comes to preschool, we really just are trying to help them learn how to be good humans to start with, and know that they'll be successful as long as they have those types of skills built up. Math, reading, that comes later. You can always build up to that, but you can't replace um, those skills when it comes to understanding what it's like to take care of each other and understanding empathy, and what it means to share and be kind and have patience. I think those are some really good skills that we emphasize to our kids, more than anything else at this point.
And be an eternal curious to always look for knowledge and for experience and to look at the world around you as this kind of endless source of new information, but new experiences that is just like it just makes life so rich. I mean, I
Right.
remember I had this idea when I was younger to create a school that would just constantly be outside and using your environment as a class. But I'm pretty sure that's what your wife and you obviously as a parent do.
Well, right, and I keep thinking about this time where I had to get past my own fear and anxiety and push it down deep. As my 4-year-old, she comes up to me, and She has named three earthworms that are the largest earthworms I've ever seen that are alive and wriggling that she found in our garden, and proceeds to put them in her pocket. And then I starts to walk inside because she's going to go inside and share them with her mom. And I'm like, yeah, hang on a second there. And um, it was never my intention to grab these slimy little creatures out of a coat pocket. But as a dad, it's like, you know what, we'll make sure they're happier outside, and we're going to take care of these creatures. But she is so curious and so interested in what these little worms were doing. And um, it, and every time we go outside and she has the opportunity, she's digging them up, trying to find them and explore and and expand that knowledge. She's pursuing that curiosity that's driving her.
Is your 10-year-old aware of what you and your wife are planning to do traveling the world? I mean, she has obviously the 4-year-old has less of awareness of what that entails, but the 10 years old now is at the age where she understands what is the next, couple of years of her life is going to be. Is she thrilled or is she has some reservations?
Oh, well, at this point, the way we've talked about it, she has a map of the world in her room on the wall. I think she's really excited to go and explore with us. I think there are a lot of really cool things that she's looking forward to. And when she finds out that there are some times where she has to stay home or spend some time with grandma, she gets a little disappointed. She's very much anxious to get out and explore with us, and see what it is that we're talking about. She's heard stories. She's heard the best parts of Europe, or like the different things like that, and that's what we want to kind of keep encouraging in her, is like, yeah, keep thinking about the good parts of things. Let's focus on those, because that is what's going to let you overcome anything that's going to try to get in your path. Just keep focusing on what the exciting and good parts are, because you can expand those and really dive into those areas.
Well, I think that they are absolutely fortunate and going to be so grateful of that opportunity that you're giving them. It's just the best thing that parents can give to their children. So a big high five to you and your wife. Now, Chris, I want to.
Awesome.
I mean,
Well, a little selfishly, I'm excited to go see it too. But yeah, so
all right. So let's just make it the kids have to follow. It's more for the parents' enjoyment, and the kids unfortunately have to follow into come along with the parents. But in the
right,
process,
it's
we'll
their privilege to come and follow. Yeah.
exactly. Now, I want to stick with that childhood period because for you, we got to know you obviously with Inspiration 4, but your love of space has started really from a young age. You say in your bio that you were in Florida looking up into the night sky, and then you were a mentor in the space camp. Can you tell us a little bit more about your upbringing and how much space was present and important for you?
Sure. Well, I remember back in elementary school, I went to elementary school in Central Florida, and uh, right around the time where the space program took a pause after Challenger, and it wasn't until about fourth grade when the shuttle finally flew again. But I remember going outside, and everyone was staring off towards the east, hoping to catch a glimpse of the plume and the trail behind the space shuttle. Um, but it was present a little bit then. It was very much present when my dad brought home a couple of SD's rockets for us to build together and launch on the middle school, uh, football field. Uh, it was an opportunity for me to also explore a little bit. I had some pretty neat teachers that were really involved um, eh, with astronomy and advanced math. I was definitely the nerdy kid because I was involved in the math team in elementary school and competing with other schools in the county. It kind of just went up from there, and just exploring, and then just what was possible. From there, it became something that I got to do more of once got into high school. I had some fantastic support and some fantastic and uh, teachers and professors that demanded more from us and more from me, encouraging me to take on greater challenges and to push me and see what I could do. They also let me explore what I thought was interesting, and that came from my physics professor, who would hold astronomy classes late at night and break out these large telescopes and these large sets of binoculars. And we'd have star maps out and try to find different things in the night sky. It was a time when a comet was coming through, so we were able to take a look at the comet through these binoculars and the telescopes and just see some amazing clusters and star groups and galaxies. I think it was the first time I realized that stars actually have color in the night sky. They're not just little white specks, they're red, blue, yellow, orange. And I had always taken that for granted until it was pointed out to me. And then understanding, okay, then the next question that comes up is, well, why are they different colors? And then learning as to asking that question and having that answer provided as though it's the different fuel that's burning, or it relates to the size. It can also relate to the size of the star and its mass, and you can determine how far away it is from some of those variables. And that those kinds of things grew, and that made me really want to pursue more of an aerospace and science type career. And that led me down to Embry-Riddle in Florida, where they uh, had an engineering physics program that kind of combined the best of engineering and physics, and promised that if I stuck with it, I could do well and build the satellites that the scientists are asking for that get launched on the aerospace engineers' rockets, which was really exciting to me. I found lots of other interests while I was in school, though, but including working with ProSpace, to work on the legislative side of things and to talk to Congress about this love and this passion of that that lives outside of government NASA as well. That there are a lot of industries and people that want to see more and do more. It also let me. Those are some of the things that I kind of grew up doing. I never had the chance to really go to space camp as a kid, but once I got to college, I had a friend who knew that I was into rockets and knew that I had done some volunteering at camps back at home in North Carolina over the summer, and I said, "Hey, how would you like to have your room and board paid for and get a little bit of money on the side and work at space camp?" And I thought, well, that could be kind of cool. And um, from there, led to an interview and led to a few great years of working as a camp counselor there in Titusville, Florida, working with kids, getting really involved with the Astronaut Hall of Fame there and STEM education that was grounded in space, taking tours of Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center, being indoctrinated from going on those visitor center tours with hearing the same patriotic music and videos, every week, multiple times, which is all right. It was great, but really understanding what America's space history was from the 50s through the 60s and up to the moon landings and beyond, and then translating that internally for me and sharing that with the kids, and having them be excited to do their simulated space shuttle missions up until when I joined the Air Force.
I think it's history is as important as travel because it gives context to. I mean, we forget how the the things we take for granted actually have a history, and if you don't give the context, then people forget the effort and the road to where we are today. In the same way that if you don't take people traveling, they forget what they have home. So for me, it's always been important to teach the history with and history being important on taking a line of obviously the middle line and not trying to politicize history, but giving a sense of this is the reality and everything is a product of its time. And it's always easy to judge the past, but I think it's a wrong attitude because we're always trying to do most likely the best with the tools that we have. It's only the hindsight that gives you the capacity to say, well, that was a stupid idea or that was a really great idea. Because there's a lot of things that we do today that, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we'll look back and say, well, that was not our greatest time or moment, but in that precise moment, we were trying to do the right thing. Would you agree with that?
100%. Absolutely. I think some of the best things that come from learning about history is that you have the opportunity to do something different the next time similar problems come up. I think that a big part of learning about space history and America's space program was learning about how, especially going through the Astronaut Hall of Fame at the time, is that you see all these magazines or these comic book covers, and on the back is Pan Am Airways. They're talking about they're going to develop their moon base, and you're going to go visit there one day. And understanding what we did to get to that point and where the excitement and enthusiasm was coming from. And it was at that time a chance to prove that we're on top of the world, that, or figuratively, I guess in this case, but almost literally, as we're trying to get to the moon and beat the Russians at it. And at that time, it was very important to be first. It wasn't just about pushing technology, it was about um, political prestige and our place in the world and feeling safe and secure um, in that kind of environment. And so, what that led to was a very large government program that uh, did a lot of great things in technology, built some amazing rockets in the Saturn V, um, but also pretty much forced all of us to accept the space shuttle program when it came along as the way to get to low Earth orbit. It was government funded, it was government subsidized, and essentially was um, for better or worse, was pushing out competition for other operators to get into low Earth orbit. And I think it was a really important thing for us to learn that if we want to really grow and establish a permanent presence in space that we have, where lots of people can play, we need to look and go back farther in history and understand, well, why do we have the airlines that we do today? Why do we have the air transportation system that we do today? At the very beginning, yes, it was heavily subsidized airmail from the government that encouraged the development of airmail routes that then slowly but surely led to the development of passenger air travel. And eventually, in the mid 80s, things were deregulated so that airlines could set their own ticket prices and a bunch of different other things where, yes, at first there were some things that the government did that were good, and we then saw that they did the opposite when it came to the initial development of America's space program. And so now a lot of lobbying went into trying to encourage NASA and the federal government to understand that throughout the 90s and late 90s and early 2000s that it was okay to take the funds that we were putting into getting to low Earth orbit, which we've been doing for decades at this point. Let's take those and put them towards more advanced research and exploration. And that's kind of where we started developing the Artemis program and encouraging that, while still keeping the space station afloat using the entrepreneurial spirit of the private sector and getting them to develop new ways and more cost-effective ways of getting to low Earth orbit. It's not new technology. It's just new ways of using technology and developing it in a way that is the next step so that we don't have these barriers to get to space. It's pretty exciting to me. It's very exciting to me, actually. And knowing that we've learned and have convinced people that make those decisions that it's okay to take a different path, a different course. It takes a lot of encouraging and a lot of pushing and a lot of convincing to get someone like the federal government or a big organization to steer their course in a different direction. But with the advocacy that we had up on Capitol Hill and all of us that had different visions, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and others that are building these smaller rocket companies, they have visions for what they see is possible in space and allowing them to flourish is what we should be encouraging.
Now, is that what made you go when you were younger into politics, or I mean, with pro space and legislation? I mean, the world of legislation and government is not for everyone. It's a pretty complicated world. A lot of it. If you take a straight line between A and B, this is more like a fly path, of just
Right.
going in so many different places, knocking on different doors. Did you end up going there simply by chance, or were you purposeful? And what did you learn the most during your time in Washington?
Oh, well, going back just a step, it was when I got to college for the first time. I really wanted to jump in with both feet and be involved with as many space organizations and clubs as possible. And so I wanted to really get that opportunity and immerse myself in all things space. And so one of those organizations at the time did that trip, that March Storm trip with ProSpace. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to learn a little bit. Um, and when I got there, it was such an incredible group of people that came from all over the country that shared this immense love for space, and they all had a shared vision, and it was infectious. And they really encouraged me to think big and draw out that passion when it came to talking about space. And then from that, being able to walk the halls of Congress and speak to staffers and to senators and House representatives, and at one time giving a briefing at the White House office building. It was eye opening to see how our legislative process works behind the scenes. Yes, on C-SPAN you can watch our leaders debate on the floor, but a lot of what they are talking about comes from those conversations almost directly that we were having there, just as citizens, private citizens, walking the halls, rubbing elbows with these people, and talking to the interns and the staffers that they want to make a difference, and they're there to support their boss, their congressperson or senator. And it's really neat to see that just how much access and you can have as a citizen with your representatives. We have a very interesting process to pass laws in this country, and it's not behind closed doors, which is fantastic. We have a lot more access to them if you make the effort to it, that to go and see your Congress people directly. And then after that, I mean, once I saw that happen and knew how the process worked, I was hooked. And there was no way I was not going to bring that passion back to DC. And we would hear comments at times too, saying, "Hey, we love it when you guys come here because you tell us how it is, not how your pocketbook says it should be." And because that's the passion that we all brought, and it was great. We brought people from all parts of the country, all different sides of the spectrum when it comes to other politics, but space was that one unifying subject that brought and does bring all these different sides of people together, because there's so much opportunity and so much creativity when it comes to exploring space. It's fantastic.
It's one of the things that I remember traveling. I mean, I'm originally from Canada. I've lived in the US for most of my time, but I've also lived in Europe, London, South America, and Buenos Aires. And there is an openness for critique in the US that you don't find almost anywhere else in the world. This idea of being open to critique your own government through a whole bunch of media, whether it's writing or making movie that literally complains about your government. This openness to say what you have to say. You don't have that in Canada, or people don't do it. You don't have that in England or even in France. It's really, there's a dynamic energy in America that I think that we forget. That we forget that we have. It's a mess. It's messy. Democracy is a messy process.
It's very messy.
Being
Yeah.
able to say what you want to say demands that we have to build communication tools. But it's only when you, again, traveling outside, and getting away and getting that context, that perspective that makes you realize, oh my God, like we have all these tools at our fingers and we can use them, we can abuse them, but they exist. And it's only by using them that you get to appreciate all the benefits of our system. That is, again, it's a messy process, right?
Right, absolutely, and you're making a great case for universal preschool, Daniel. I mean, that's where we all would learn these skills of having a thick skin and having empathy and working together instead of being constantly combative if someone disagrees with us. And we're not trying to win all the time. You don't want to hurt other people's feelings to make your point. If that's not going to work, and it's not the most effective way to get someone to change their mind. That's been studied and proven as well too. But building empathy and building a relationship and a consensus is a huge skill. But it sometimes, as we've seen, uh, can get negative and get sour. But it's fantastic that we do have that opportunity and that freedom to bring opposing sides together. Now, if we really want to accomplish something with the end result, then we're going to have to really take a deep, hard look at each other and try to understand why is someone thinking differently or saying something different from what I am saying, and what's their motivation? Why do they feel this way? I think if we asked a few more questions of each other, we would understand each other a little bit better, and we would come to better answers and solve more problems.
When I used to do more of the my solo wilderness expeditions, and I would go to places, remote places, and I would part of my way of discovering those places was to learn it through the people that live there. I would find myself at their table being hosted, sitting and hearing their stories. And it's by listening to them that you realize that at the core of it, we're all the same. We all want the same out of life. We want to have meaning, to that we matter, that we create a safe place for our children, that we give them a future. And so we all want the same thing, but because of our environment and because of circumstances, then the way that we apply or the way that we go from there differs. So if we can, from a young age,
Mhm.
develop the skill for children to a certain awareness and listening, so to understand the different perspective of life, because this is communication 101, right? Even in couples, the minute that you start to say to the other ones like you did this, while the other one goes into defensive mode, even if they agree with you, it's just because nobody likes to be accused. And so if we can go back
That's
and
absolutely
and
correct.
and teach and really make an emphasis on communication tools, so that we can manage these differences and create that empathy, that will go a really long way. And I think that's what you're going to be doing by taking your children traveling.
Oh yeah, I hope so. I think that's going to be a big part of what they learn. They're on the right path right now as it is, and I do think it's also one of those things that just because we're talking about space as well, is that's another great powerful takeaway from being able to see the Earth from a high altitude, is that you have various and different experiences of the overview effect, and it, that makes a good case for why we need to continue this exploration, continue pursuing multiple ways of getting to space to allow more people to have that experience. I still can't get over uh, Shatner's response when he came back from his Blue Origin suborbital flight, being in microgravity for just 4 minutes, and he came back moved, and you could see that he wished he had experienced that decades previous, way back in his earlier days. It gave him a whole new appreciation and perspective on things. And uh, I listened to him and I thought that, yeah, he gets it. He totally understands what that power of the overview effect can have. I have yet to meet someone or talk to someone in honest detail about the overview effect that hasn't had some sort of profound effect like that. I keep seeing every now and then I have a thought, or I'll feel like there's some really cool way of expressing what it means to me, and then I'll see a quote from an astronaut sum it up in a perfect way in the exact same words that I was trying to express it in, and it keeps happening over and over again. I've seen Story Musgrave talk about it, Nicole Stott, Katie Coleman. Um, Obviously, you can't really see it behind me, but there's the it's Frank White's book, The Overview Effects behind me. There's, there are novels written about this thing, and it's another way of encouraging people to understand why Yuri Gagarin said the words he did when he flew over the Earth as the first human in orbit and first human in space, even to say that Earth is too small to have conflict, but big enough to work together. Or I probably butchered that as well, but it was that sense of feeling, saying that we have an opportunity to do things together and make this place such an incredible place to live and be from. Why are we fighting? Why are we arguing over some of these things when we have really one beautiful planet that we need to take care of together as a community?
It's giving really the, you're talking about William Shatner. I mean, he's a person obviously that was trained in processing information in the moment. And if you compare, his reaction to
Right.
the Blue Origin engineer who won the last one, and you could see when he came back, his brain was trying to make sense of the emotional experience that happened, and is like he was having trouble because it's a total different language that he speak with. William Shatner is just this emotional character who grew up primed in this understanding of what space represents, and he goes up, and then suddenly all these dots now can connect in a way that really expresses what he just saw. And as we take more and more people going to space, it's going to be really important to not only train them with safety measures and the physical reality of it, but also to give them a framework on how to process the information they're going to experience. Great, you see the Earth, you see all this. This is what it represents. This is where it can mean to you, as opposed to just leave people process. And I was talking to another person who went up on Blue Origin, they're still struggling on trying to process the experience. And the same for you. It's so big, it's so meta, it's so powerful that if you don't, and this is what Frank White did, Frank gave a language to express that sentiment, that experience. But it's even more important to give it to people before they go up, so that they're primed to make sense in the way that we want them to make sense.
Yeah. Cyan Proctor was very fortunate to have her on my flight with us. I've heard her talk about how, as if she was selected part of the astronaut uh, class back in 2009, she would have had that singular mindset of going up into space as a scientist, as an engineer and geologist. When that did not pan out, and she ended up flying into space as an artist and a poet. And it is so inspirational to hear her talk about her experiences and see her craft the words. It's she I know I keep hearing her quote Jodie Foster and saying, oh, they should have sent a poet. Well, we did, right? And so with us, and it's very important because it's not just about the physicalities of the experience. It is, as we said, more humans, more people in the space. We are going to be taking more of our humanity with us, and that's how we communicate with each other, and that's how we share experiences, is through those different mediums of culture and art and music and poetry, and it's our humanity that connects us, and that's really the best way to share that experience with each other.
Chris, it was so, like, when I think of you and the inspiration for crew, what really resonates with me, why I think it was such an amazing feat of humanity, is just precisely because of what you just said. The human story. It was at the core of it a human story with the best that we can achieve, the best that we can do. And I'm so glad that you got to be part of it. I know that it was a little bit challenging for your wife or for the entire family, but
Oh,
I
sure.
met her, and you two form a beautiful story of what we can achieve together through the challenges. Now, when you go on a trip, and I know it's 2 years away from it, but are you planning to attend the total solar eclipse with your children?
I have that on my to-do list for sure. We've got a few other hurdles to get over in the near term, but I can't possibly see passing an opportunity like that up. And I know the community to be in touch with and to work with that will help make that possible. So I'm looking forward to it. I have yet to experience a total solar eclipse personally. I wasn't able to get down into Oregon when it came through most recently. So it's from everything I've heard and I've talked to other folks about. I think we're going to definitely uh, do what we can to make sure we're in that path.
It is definitely. I was actually in Oregon and photographed it, and there is something really spooky. You really understand. We're talking about history. You really understand how in the
Mm.
past indigenous cultures would come to believe that it's the end of the world because what is happening is really
Oh, sure.
counterintuitive to what the world should be. You really feel like it's the end of the world, and your mind goes, well, of course I'm going to go and sacrifice whatever needs to sacrifice. This needs to stop because it's not good. But if you, I really hope that
Right.
you get to
Right.
celebrate. Who knows? Maybe we'll put a big group together and then we'll celebrate. So
That'd be great. Yeah, it's I can't say we would be up for a Burning Man style, but maybe something a little bit more, a little bit more friendly for the family. My wife's been through enough this past year, so. But
absolutely,
yeah, no, that'd be fantastic. And yeah,
no Burning Man guarantee. I don't think it won't be this experience. It will be another experience where we can invite the kids.
there we
Chris,
go.
it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Daniel, thank you again. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks.